Hi everyone, I'm Dan Kaplan, Executive Editor of SC Magazine, and welcome. I'm here with Anthony Di Bello, who is a Senior Product Marketing Manager at Guidance Software. Guidance makes e-discovery, incident response solutions, that sort of thing. Anthony, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be here.
You had mentioned to me off camera that the incident of when Google was attacked back in 2009, that really opened a lot of people's eyes to the fact that breaches are going to happen, compromises are going to happen, and you need to sort of plan the response end of it.
Right. I think that that breach in particular represented a fundamental shift in the market's willingness to admit that the eventuality of a breach is a very real problem.
So organizations, for the most part, across the board, across industry, are catching on to this?
They are across industry. It's more of a size of organization that's showing interest and willingness to approach response and implementing technology to that effect. We do see particular interest from government, financial, universities, but it is a cross-industry problem, and as such, those more visionary organizations cross-industry are looking for a way to solve that issue.
I don't want to get too much into the specific technology of Guidance. We try to keep these conversations pretty vendor neutral, but you guys are sometimes called in after a breach happens, but also increasingly folks are getting more proactive and want to bring you in order to implement some stuff that will perhaps allow them to react quicker if something does happen.
That's true, particularly when it's different verticals that have become a target of any kind of rash of attacks, like university, hospitality, etc.
Are some of you mentioned some of those university, hospitality? Have they been particular targets of late?
Over the last couple of years, there have been concentrated attacks against those verticals, and as such, those that may not have been targeted early on are looking for a way to respond when that cycle comes around.
So give me some general best practices. If you're an organization and you know that breaches are kind of a when, not if proposition at this point, what do you need to be doing?
Well, organizations really need to take a lean forward approach when it comes to a response, and the situation as it stands today, you've got organizations that have such a volume of events they can't keep up, thus their only recourse is to wipe and rebuild and try to move on with business. Whereas a better approach would at least be automating some of that initial response, capturing some responsive data off the host in order to determine, well, what happened, what's the scope of a potential breach, and more intelligently go after the problem as it exists on your enterprise.
So it's creating that level of intelligence. Basically, the more information you have, the better you can respond.
That's right. You think of being able to capture host information in an automated fashion as a new layer of visibility to what already exists on the wire.
Through the years, we've kind of moved from the detection to the response. Is that generally how it's going? And I know you talked a little bit about looking forward and what you hope to see within the industry within the next few years.
Well, I think it's been a very logical progression, and as each stage in that security workflow matures, it exposes problems along the next stage of that life cycle. So, for example, in the early part of the century, we saw heavy investments in detection and folks putting all those layers in place, at which point there were so many layers, there wasn't enough staff to monitor the various consoles, which gave rise to technologies like SIM around the 2005-06 time frame, and over the last year or two we've seen those commoditized, and that's presented a problem in the next stage of the workflow in terms of response. Now we can see the volume of problems, and we're left wondering, okay, what do we do and how do we do it?
Organizations are being targeted quite a bit by various classes of hackers. You know, you have the hacktivists, you have the nation staters, you have the folks after the financial information. Does the response need to be different based on what type of attack it is, and what type of perhaps malware is targeting you, and that sort of thing?
It could be. There's some general things you'd want to do in the eventuality of any kind of attack. For example, just gaining some live data off the host. What ports are open when that attack came across? Are there any hidden processes running on this machine in time, for example?
Okay. Well, I appreciate the insight here, and we know the breaches aren't going to stop, so there has to be, so this stuff needs to be in place for a lot of these organizations. So thank you for joining us. Anthony Di Bello, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Guidance Software. Thanks for coming into the office.
Thanks for having me.